Welcome everyone to First. A big question that everyone is asking. Will AI destroy Hollywood? At the very least, big change is coming. We've got an all-star panel here to discuss many questions related to AI. And is AI being used in film right now? The answer is yes. And how will AI affect independent filmmakers? You're going to have to follow these rules, all these rules Hollywood has put on themselves. Get ready as we confront these questions and more on this episode of Versus. Wow. Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Well,
very good.
I love the enthusiasm. We have an all-star panel. I'm going to let everybody, introduce themselves. Starting with...
Hey, I'm Frozen, but I'm Alan Ng. And as ChatGPT says, I'm the editor-in-chief of Film Threat, a prominent website dedicated to reviewing and promoting independent films. And I've been there since 2013, which is clearly wrong. But that's me.
Yeah. All right.
Hi, I'm the Script Doctor. I'm a Hollywood screenwriter since 2006, and I also do some commentary on YouTube and Twitter and Patreon. Happy to be here.
Nice.
My name is Robert Meyer Burnett. I am a filmmaker, producer, YouTuber. You can find me on the Burnett Network or on Instagram, and I have a new film that we're selling at Cannes called White Devils, and I'm about to be producing a 10-part audio drama written by Max Allan Collins, who wrote Road to Perdition.
And joining us for the first time, but he's been on the show before, Jim Agnew.
Jim Agnew, yeah, screenwriter, producer, WJ member, jack of all trades.
Nice. And for the first time ever on Versus, you've seen his viral videos, Warren Smith. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I was a full-time teacher until about 2 weeks ago. I still teach some filmmaking courses at Emerson College. And I have a background in movie producing and screenwriting. I've written and produced one feature film. I just do a little bit of independent stuff on my own now. So, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here, Warren. Welcome, everyone. This is great. I wanted to bring together industry professionals who've had experience in the industry on many sides, and I think a lot of them are represented here. Let's start out. Give me your overall impressions of AI. We've seen demos. We've heard speculation. Give us your basic take on AI. Start with script, and Alan, you'll go last. So wait, I don't. It's fine.
Yes,
Sure.
thank you.
Well, AI is it's incorrectly labeled. They call it artificial intelligence, but it is nowhere near artificial. It is more of an elaborate simulated intelligence. And the people that are behind it and the people that are working on it like to use big words like neural network, which is actually not a neural network. I've seen behind the curtain, so to speak. It's really just advanced algorithms with predicted text that is able to solve general problems and is being utilized in a lot of facets of our lives, particularly in Hollywood on the creative side, which I think is antithetical to the industry. But on the corporate side, it's going to be used towards solving problems, statistics, and data collection.
Interesting. Jim, what are your thoughts?
I think the genie's out of the bottle and there's no putting it back. I don't think right now it's going to destroy the film industry or as we know it, change it dramatically, but maybe 2 or 3 years it may get there. There's some things that scare me and some things that make me think that if done right can be efficiency tools to make films more inexpensive. I think it works on 2 different levels. Like studio level, I think they're going to really embrace it, but most of their notes feel like AI notes anyway. And things like that, they're very the lowest common denominator. I'll never work on a studio film again after saying that. But I think it can also help to, below the line and make things move faster, better, and really help indie filmmakers. And it could change in a year or two, who knows, or 10 months.
Right. Rob?
Well, I think that the real problem is that AI gets rid of creative intent because it scrapes the internet and it provides images and things of things that already exist. Nobody in Hollywood ever got rich following a trend. You set trends in Hollywood. And I think that AI, by definition, cannot do that. And we've already seen the Art Directors Guild pause their training program this year because people not being employed. I know a lot of people that were concept designers. I mean, everybody from Ralph McQuarrie to Doug Chang, if you know your Star Wars history, would be out of a job because of AI. Because what you would do is you'd just whatever prompts, give me a capital ship, from some that's kind of like the one described in this book. And we're getting those things, and it doesn't allow for human innovation. But then again, the argument can be made that human innovation is, well, it's human beings filtering what they've seen before. So I think it's inevitable. I think it's going to be a tool we're going to have to live with for the rest of our lives. But I do think it will never supplant human intent or creativity.
Warren, your overall thoughts?
I agree with Rob that it's not there yet with writing. It can't replace the soul of writing, but there's also the visual aspect of AI, and I think that is moving much faster and has much closer ramifications, and eventually it will make production way more simplified regardless of how we feel about it, and the unions will put regulations in place to prevent that. But then the end result will be that those willing to work outside the bounds of those unions will be taking advantage of that.
And I think we heard today actually that IATSE, there are more delays with that. Did you see that, Jim?
No, I know that there's a big problem with like some certain jobs like focus pulling and things like that. They're afraid they're going to be eliminated.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What jobs are going to be eliminated and affected? I believe that you're still going to need artists. You will still need a writer. You'll still need an animator. And, the computer didn't, put animators out of work, right? It's a new tool like a brush or a pencil. But what jobs will be affected?
I'll tell you the first one. It's composer. It's
sorry,
composers.
Alan. Sorry,
No,
Alan.
I think the first job to go is composers. I think I easily make music and you could throw it in the background.
Do you know something about that, Alan? That you can share with us?
I only know enough to not get people fired, but I do know that there are services in Hollywood, kind of like job postings. And for the longest time, composers, wannabe composers, amateur composers, they would go to this site and they would look, and the studios would post jobs there saying, well, we need some music for this. We need some music for that. And all I can tell you is those listings are gone. Studios are not posting anymore any jobs like that.
Well, we might have gotten word that a certain major studio is already using AI to score TV shows. Is that right, Alan?
That could be true.
No, it is true.
I know we've all I can say is people have talked to us, and that's as far as I can go to say.
I wanted to point out, Script, I really like the way that you put it. You're not saying it's artificial intelligence, it's simulated intelligence. In some way, I almost think it's like a randomizer. You ever play a video game where you have to create a character and you're like, I'm too lazy. I'm not going to spend an hour creating a character. I'll just click randomize and then get the one I want. In some way, is that what it's like, Script?
To varying degrees, but it's something that you can actually refine a lot more specifically step by step that you go. The reason I use simulated is because it's modeled after basically tons of psychology books about how human beings think. And if you're a fan of psychology, you realize that all of those books, all of those thought processes, from Nietzsche to Jung and so forth, they're all just scraping the surface. We have no clue how deep our mind actually goes. So it's very, very superficial. And to your point, like, there's a lot of things that it can do. Mathematical problems it's actually really good at. programming in JSON and C++ and any other, in Python, all those things, it can do quite well. Music is definitely another one, because music is very mathematically dependent. It works in numbers just the way anything else. But when dealing with, say, poetry, creative writing, trying to develop imagination, or reconciling certain words in the English language, and discerning the synonyms and homonyms in how they work in context, AI struggles with greatly at that, because they just don't have the ability to recognize. And although when you speak to an AI, such like as a Chat GPT or a Bard or a Gonk, they will say that they're not aware, but that's a pre-programmed response. They actually have no connectivity to those words and what they actually mean. And they also are very easy to confuse, and they also eat up their own synthetic data. And that's one of the biggest problems that AI is currently facing right now, is that the more AI you as a user generates and puts out into the world, that also starts to factor into where they scrape data from. So they'll essentially be scraping AI data to AI data, and that causes basically what a great line from Star Trek season 2, replicative fading, which means that every single copy of a copy of a copy of the AI data ends up degenerating it, and AI models itself actually can collapse. So in order for AI to actually be usable and profitable, you still have to have fresh, new human data for it to learn from in order to maintain itself. Otherwise, you're feeding it a diet of synthetic stuff, and synthetic doesn't actually have any of the digital nutrients needed to keep something like that in operation. So what are the first jobs that are going to go away? Assistant jobs. Any jobs that requires bookings, any jobs that requires data collection, marketing, anything that requires executive decisions that are based on math and statistics would be the first ones to be replaced, because that is the stuff that requires far more complex algorithms to process. And then someone has to be able to translate those results, and so that they can equate to like human behavior from that we as human beings have instinctively developed over the course of our lives.
What about accountants and lawyers? Are they going to have jobs, or will I just...
Accountants, yes. Lawyers, no, because law is open to interpretation, and interpretation is very, very broad, and AI cannot interpret right now. And it might be able to in maybe another 2 or 3 generations.
You mean lawyers will keep their jobs, but accountants won't, right?
Yes, lawyers will keep their jobs, because there's more arguing in lawyer and the legal system than there is in accounting. Numbers are numbers. You can't really do much with that. You can play in gray areas and whatnot, but an AI will actually avoid those. In fact, the worst thing that accountants would ever fear is if the IRS just got rid of all their employees and replaced it with AI. There's no arguing with an AI of whether or not something was tax deductible or not. It just will say, the law says this is what it's the parameters. You do not qualify, therefore you owe us X amount of dollars. And
stockbrokers too.
Stockbrokers as well. High frequency trading. You can build an AI model that will be your trade broker, and it will sell at frequencies far faster than what's currently available. So, and also insider trading knowledge and all that stuff. It's all able to be programmed and structured around that.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's a question of how AI will be used. How is AI being used now? I mean, look, there are college students now using AI to write their papers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that, Warren, is that
teachers using AI to grade them?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe Warren, you can give us insight on that. Like,
the administrators are using AI to write out lesson plans, emails. Teachers are using it probably more than the students I've encountered. I would say the teachers are using it more to write lesson plans and do their paperwork.
Yeah. Does anyone want to jump in and say how AI is being used at this moment, at this very moment, by people in the industry?
Editing. A lot of them are being used for editing. Go ahead, Jim.
I know a few writers that are using it. A few screenwriters. Now, here's the thing, though. Let me just put a note on that, though. I know a few people have told me that they're using it for an efficiency tool. They're not so much using it. These are pro writers that work a lot. They're not using it, to create storylines or dialogue. They're using it more or less to like write descriptions. They'll just put in their screenplay like a dark alley, and then they'll have the scene rewritten or that rewritten, into all the florid stuff that you put in a screenplay, and they'll do their own dialogue. They write their own stories, come up with their own. It's just more efficiency tool. I do know people that are using it for that. Now, I've taken some scripts I've written, some scripts I've even sold that haven't been made, and I put just a synopsis into ChatGPT to see what it would say. And it will give me the most like dumbass version of the script ever, that from the worst producer. But the scary thing that freaks me out is like about 60% of it's almost like kind of what I wrote, in the outline. So, that kind of freaks me out a little bit. But those were also more like I said, I don't think though you can recreate a Quentin Tarantino. It's like you can, if you want to make a John Wick movie, that's pretty by the numbers. We all could come up with an outline for that in like 20 minutes, or something that's been done a million times. So I think it's going to get used a lot more for that kind of stuff, which most of those kind of people aren't very, they're not intellectual filmmakers anyway, those kind of producers. So, but I do know some screenwriters are using it for that kind of stuff, but they would not rely on it for dialogue and things like that and story ideas.
No, because it's just not capable of doing it. I've seen them use it for budgeting. They'll throw in a script to be like, give me a proper budget for this type of the screenplay, and they'll give you general numbers, and they'll source you places where for rentals and cast and all that stuff. I used it once for a spell check just because it would be far more efficient than the normal one that I'd have, and it's better than Grammarly, but at the same time, it's like it just doesn't feel like you're learning anything regarding that, because I like the idea of going through a script and catching my own spelling mistakes. I don't want to be passing that off to some sort of artificial being. I'd rather have a human being personally take a look at it myself. But yeah, it just doesn't have the creative juices needed or the imagination.
No, and sorry, one last thing on that too. I took a few things that I'd written and put them in the ChatGPT to see how it rewrote it, and it kind of rewrites it like in basically somebody's first script.
Yeah.
So it can take something intelligent, turn it into like the most benign version of it. That's just that you could smell it from a mile away if you read it. You'd be like, this is either somebody's first script or they use ChatGPT. So.
I was just going to say real quick. We have 1,500 people watching us live. Please share the share the stream, like it, and also check out our website, Film Threat, updated every day with new reviews of indie movies. Alan Ng is the editor. I hear he does a great job, and you can check out new movies. And coming in late to the stream is our friend Ramesh Iyer is here. He is here. I'm going to get him on here. So
hey,
thank you for joining us.
Sure.
Cool. Rob, sorry about that. I just had to get that in real quick. But
I was going to say, I have an idea for a film franchise that already exists that I don't think anybody would necessarily go back to, but I want to go back to it. And so I started throwing in ideas. I had an idea for this script, this idea to extend a currently existing IP that everybody knows, but nobody's going to extend until I make them do it. But it was very interesting working because I had a vague idea of what I wanted this story to be, where I wanted it to go. I had a 3-act structure in mind, and I just started playing around. And it got to the point, like Jim was saying, no one would ever look at this as high art. But after a couple hours messing around, I had the beginnings of a script that I would have to go in and rework. But I was quite astonished at how fast I was able to create at least a document that can be worked on. And the problem that I saw with it is that, I've been a student of cinema my entire life, so I already have fundamentals. But what about the people who don't? The thing that I'm seeing this now with younger people, especially that are using a lot of AI, there's a schism in terms of how people are comfortable with it. And I think that you really have to understand, look, I grew up having the elements of style, Strunk and White's The Elements of Style, always by my computer in terms of how to properly structure everything from a sentence to footnotes, and that was something that was integral to everything I learned in terms of writing. Well, you don't need that anymore. I don't even know if people know the elements of style anymore. And I think at the end of the day, it's like people who know how to drive, but they can't change a tire. I've always thought if you're going to get into an automobile, you better know how to change a tire, because at some point in your life, Now we all have roadside assistance. I guess no one needs it, but you might be in a place where you do need it. And I think that that's the real danger, is that by not having, and we're talking the fundamentals of how to paint, how to draw, how light works, the fundamentals of any discipline, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's writing, whatever it is, cinematography, all of those things are going to be eliminated to the point where will anybody even bother learning them? Which means that our knowledge base is very precarious. If you don't understand trigonometry or even quantum equations, if you're just going to allow the computers to do it, I think it's really going to be harmful to humanity as a whole. And that's the big threat that I see. We might have focus pullers, and I can see AI focus pullers. If you could have a focus puller on a tracking shot, on a Steadicam shot, and you could have somebody pulling focus, an AI pulling focus using infrared or whatever, that would be amazing. But you still have to understand what focus is, and you have to understand what focal lengths are, and you have to understand why you're going to use a 35 millimeter lens as opposed to a 50 millimeter lens.
Ramesh, I know you joined us late. Ramesh is my friend who is a commercial director, an indie filmmaker in his own right. Can you give us your overall impressions of AI and how you think it's going to affect things in the short term?
I thought it was interesting, Robert. You were talking about the focus, because Civil War, I believe they use a new focusing module for that whatever the new camera is, that could just focus, right? You basically didn't need a focus puller. But again, I think when we talk about AI, we have to kind of bucket it. We're talking about result oriented versus process oriented, right? So when Warren's talking about the teachers doing lessons plans and stuff like that, there's kind of a standardized, I would imagine, that they're using from year to year to year, that they're just changing just a little bit, right? And so that's more of a result-oriented thing. Or when you're just trying, even the bad scripts that are, and I'm not even Chat GPT, I'm thinking of Claude is one that a lot of screenwriters use. And honestly, people who use it will never admit they use it. But I think that when you're result-oriented, as you're saying, Robert, it becomes this homogenized sort of result that you end up getting, but it takes someone who's actually written scripts and read scripts and watched a ton of movies to make those decisions and make it unique, right?
Yes.
Kind of the quote of Barton Fink, right? This is my uniform. This is how I serve the common man. It's that uniqueness of us that makes the Tarantino script. You can put everything you want in there, and it will, cull all that information. But there's something about it that you will add that is, I think we always forget, the process of our unique experience that we've lived that makes my story completely different. Growing up in Washington State, having, maybe delivered newspapers in a small town, coming face to face with some creepy guy in a basement apartment, that is a story that I could tell in a way that's very even unique from, say, a black phone or something like that. So I think on one hand, it's not going to solve all our problems, and it's not going to destroy everything. I think it's somewhere in the middle where it's going to be this great sort of assistant that maybe gets you, again, 100 feet closer to where you want to be, but if you notice, if you put the same sentence in even Chat GPT and you say, I want you to subvert expectations, or I want you more clarity, or I want more focus, or I want more impact, it will give you 5 different answers. You as the human still have to figure out which version of that speaks to you on an emotional level so far right now, the machine is not giving you, it's giving you a version of some emotional level, but doesn't mean it strikes and speaks to me. There's a guy I follow on YouTube, and tell me if I keep going too long, but called Rick Speedo, and he's a music producer, and he's a great YouTube video, and he talks about
great YouTube channel.
And he talks about AI music, and he played this one music that was like a soulful singer, and there was some guitar and some drums, and it was all made from AI to the point that it had even the errors. And I think that's where it gets maybe a little scary and gets really good, is when you can incorporate not the perfection of it, but the errors, the space in between the notes, right? Those moments that are not perfect, right? Versus what everyone uses auto-tune, right? That kind of destroyed a lot of music. So I think that's when it gets there, who knows? But here's one interesting thing. When you were saying, Jim, you put like a page or a script in there. Like, Chris, if I put your script, remember you have that script, Tickle Monster, if I put it in there, if you submit it in the ChatGPT, it's now there as data for anyone else to sort of rake in when they go to use their information. That's something that no one's talking about, is that you're putting all that, garbage in, garbage out. When you're putting all that stuff out there, all your ideas are now out there for others. It may not specifically bring those, but it will be another resource to use to try and get the answer you're looking for. And that's both positive and negative.
Well, I want to go a little science fiction for a moment, and here's some speculation from everybody. So, like in the 70s and 80s, when I watched dystopian sci-fi, I never thought I'd live to see it, right? See, a lot of those ideas manifested in language, in human rights. Like, just the world is a little chaotic now. So I wanna hear your thoughts on how AI could be used in a way that's both good and evil, and speculate how it'll change things. I mean, Tyler Perry famously was working on a huge studio. He's building a huge studio in Atlanta, and saw a demo of what AI could do and stopped spending money on his studio. We heard, this was years ago, there was a film production that had licensed the rights to James Dean's face to use as a character in a movie. Are we going to see stars from the past resurrected in new movies? And what other maybe potentially frightening ways will we see AI used? I mean, we're seeing it used in a humorous way with politics, right? There's goofy videos of like Trump, like in a wrestling match, decking Biden. I mean, they're obviously fake. Those are fake. When will it be indistinguishable from reality? And how is AI going to be used? One way is resurrecting old movie stars. They say there are no movie stars. Maybe not any movie stars today, but plenty in the past who could be, as Bob Iger put it, mined to be used, IP mining. So I want to hear everyone's speculation, good and bad. Anyone jump in? Free for all now.
I was just watching some coverage on YouTube about at CAA. They have an entire studio devoted to this, where they're bringing in clients and scanning them with just probably almost over 50 Sony A7 IIs or something that are just in 3 seconds they get the entire scan that goes inside this catalog, and then they record voice. They have them then hold the pose, so then they have all these images on record, so then they can go monetize that like they would regular clients. We're still talking about CAA, and this is happening right now. And they're using this for pickup shots. So it's not necessarily yet for entire movies, but they are prepping to head in that direction. And so I know there's talk around editors as well. Oh, we can more on the YouTube space of how we can use AI to just really quickly create content. The good side of this, though, and I do think there are potential good things here. So if I'm going to try and make a movie for $500,000, if I don't have to pay an accountant, that's less expense for me. I know that's bad for the accountants, though, and I know that goes against the way that these things are being done. I do think it's kind of interesting. Everyone was talking about writing. I think inevitably this might I think it will put more value on the ideas themselves. The most difficult part of this entire process, the most important part of this entire process, coming up with that story and that idea. Because without that, it doesn't matter any cameras, doesn't matter AI, none of that. The writing is going to increase in value as production becomes more and more accessible, even if we don't like it. It's just going to become the reality, I think.
Yeah, one quick thing I was thinking about before we started talking about this, which leads into what Warren said, is there's also another way to look at it in the film industry is, let's say focus pullers can work faster, script coordinators can work faster. You know, everybody can like kind of have these AI tools, and then does that create and we all know this because we've all made indie films, a set and a situation and a monetary situation where you can actually make 8-hour days. You know, and you're not going into 12 hours. You're not going into 18 hours. You're not paying all that overtime. And it makes everybody's job more efficient. And they're not going to make as much money, the crew, but they're working. We're doing it faster and we're cutting out a lot of that fat. And you can make, $2 million movie for $750,000. That's another way to look at it.
The logistics is going to be the first place that this gets addressed to. And I agree that it has value as a tool. But the other part too, and this is something that we've seen repeated decade and decade, is that certain players in power will abuse that tool to the point where it'll end up having less value. We have a computer-generated imaging problem in Hollywood right now, to the point where even audiences tune out because you can do almost anything with the use of the volume, with computer-animated models and puppets, but it doesn't create a real enough image on the screen for the audience to get immersed into because they're easily divorced from it. And I kind of see that the AI tool will be eventually treated the same way, because right now we still have very small people kind of lobbying for practical effects, practical stunts, practical shots, all those types of things that are not going to be all done in post-production, because we don't want to have all of our movies completed in post. We want to complete as much of it as we can in camera and then fix the things that we can't fix in camera with post. AI will be able to do that. It all comes down to, well, how do we make sure that we're using it effectively? We're not just turning it from a tool into a crutch, because right now CGI is completely a crutch. We've got Disney. They think of it so much of a crutch. They're throwing $150 million on top of a basic budget tentpole film to fix or alter or change or redo that movie. This is something that I think it has to be worrisome, because right now I'm looking at I'm looking at AI kind of similarly to how 3D movies kind of come and go every so many years. They're hot, they're cool, there's some new technology that makes it easier, better, has a thrilling aspect to the audience because it's got this fresh aspect to it. But then all of a sudden the audience kind of tunes out. They're like, well, it's not really that great anymore. I like the way the old stuff was done a little bit better. I don't want to buy a 3D TV. I don't want to have to keep going in and buying 3D glasses and putting them on. It's like too much extra stuff. And even if you did find AI a way to make a 3D movie without the glasses, people are going to be like, well, now it's a bit too immersive. Now there's too much sensory overload. Now I can't actually enjoy what I'm doing because I'm watching a movie that's, King Kong versus Godzilla on Kong Island, and then all of a sudden the 4DX, the water's splashing up on me, and I'm getting spritzed in the face at the same time, and it's not that great because now I'm being distracted by all these effects that are happening in the seat that are away from the film. Those things have to be taken into consideration, because one thing we as a species do is that when we find something new that we like, we keep doing it almost to an addictive level until we kind of purge ourselves of it again.
Well, I don't know if you guys have seen, it's a channel on YouTube called Abandoned Films, and they're doing franchises as 1950 Super Panavision 70 movies. Mm-hmm. There's a great video on how they do those. But you're looking at this now, and I'm thinking to myself, everything that you would ever see on screen, from costumes to props to backgrounds, are being generated via AI. Now, we're at the very early stages of this. I would give it a year or two. Everybody's going to be able to generate their own feature films overnight. And it's going to get to the point where, I don't know if you ever saw Wim Wenders' Until the End of the World, but in that movie, there's a machine where people can watch their own dreams, and they get addicted to it because you're watching your own subconscious. Everyone is now going to be able to generate just about anything. And you'll be able to insert yourself into you want to be in Mean Girls? You can be in Mean Girls. You want to be in Star Wars? You'll be able to insert yourself into Star Wars. We're at the very, very beginnings of this of this technology. And what it really comes down to is, what are people going, like Scripty was just saying, I'm sorry, I say Scripty, but Script.
I like it. It's cool.
Scripty, because you're on set with me. But what's going to happen when this becomes the norm and normalized, where people no longer care whether or not it's generated by AI or by a human being? Because everybody is going to be given the opportunity. I'm already seeing this. People are like, yeah, look what I did. I made this thing through AI. And while the ideas came from you, none of the conceptualization came from you. So the idea of how color works in the frame, or how design works in a frame. And then the real question is, does it matter? And I think it becomes an existential question as to, what is art in the first place? If art is what human beings use to comment on the existence of humanity, how do we convey truths about our own existence through our art? If we don't need to do that anymore because AI will do it for us, where does that leave ourselves? How do we then reflect back on our own lives? And in terms of talk about a dystopia, people, I think, are going to be running around. We used to ask, why are we here? Or as V'ger asked, is this all I am? Is there nothing more in Star Trek: The Motion Picture? Where is that going to leave us? And I can see in 5 or 10 years, we are going to have huge existential questions that go way beyond the identity issues that we're dealing with today. And that, in terms of a sci-fi dystopia, I think we're going to lose our own identity as a living creature. And I think that's going to get really interesting. And that's why I think we need to be very, very careful with how we move forward with this technology.
For those, if you're just listening and not watching, I have, over the last year, created a playlist of AI art and films that I find fascinating, including the ones you referenced, those 50s Panavision versions.
They're really amazing. I mean, they're amazing to look at.
They're really cool. And
2 minutes or a minute,
that?
and then you're bored. They're amazing
that's
for
right.
the first minute, and then they're so boring.
Yeah.
But someone is going to use this to make a whole movie, Flash Gordon or something. And some of them are really, I mean, here's this one here.
The old
and
stuff.
by the way, I will share the link to this playlist, which is unlisted, but you can subscribe to it. I add videos to this list like daily. I'm finding amazing stuff. So we'll watch one of these without audio. This is Wes Anderson's Dune. So, which is very much in a Wes Anderson style.
But again, it's always based on someone else's style and someone else's previous ideas. I've had yet, except for the music video I shared with you, which was the first AI one, I've yet to see something newly generated that felt so original, and more than that, held my attention with our short attention spans.
I would say streaming and all the sort of constant being bombarded with content, our sensibilities and have been lowered to the point where a fully AI it's going to start with children's programming. Then it's going to keep leaking more and more. That's my prediction. Sorry, I interrupted you, Script. My apologies.
No, it was Jim was speaking, actually.
Oh, Jim. Sorry, Jim.
I was just saying, is this any different than Rebel Moon?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's something about that we always never talk about, which is the subconscious. It's funny. I'm a huge David Fincher fan, and I saw, is it The Killer? And there's a shot where Michael Fassbender's riding a motorcycle or the scooter through the street. And I didn't realize when I saw it, I saw the making of it. It's the scooter's fake, the street's fake, the lighting's fake. His whole body is fake except for his face in the helmet. And I watched that film thinking, one, I know it's because he's probably done too much television and it doesn't feel he's taking chances, but it just felt there was something subconsciously that lost me in that film because it felt so processed. And I think there is something maybe it's because I've seen old films and new films, but and to your point, Chris, maybe that'll go away, but there's something about our subconscious that we can't quantify or qualify, that it's right if we talk about, it's not just creating something, but it's like art, it's action reaction to it.
But that's because we were trained already. What happens when all we're watching is, kids are growing up and they've only ever seen AI generated content? Maybe they won't be able to tell the difference.
Then maybe I will become the greatest filmmaker because everything will feel so homogenized. And you will do something completely different than what becomes the norm. And when the actors become homogenized, maybe then actors will come back, real actors that have flaws who are not perfect. I think about, you have to prompt all that, right? And if you've ever seen someone do, as you probably have, visual effects and all the nodes that they create and all the programming, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to sit down and do all this prompting just to get a certain look to a certain thing there's something about the making of it that is different with my hands, I guess. I'm a tactile person. Maybe someone else would enjoy that.
Outside of a few TV shows and films the last 2-3 years, most stuff is pretty bad anyway. Could AI really make any of it any worse? But I think where I'm going with that is that it, everything's so homogenized. This may make it worse. And I'm trying to put a brighter spin on what Robert said, even though I completely 100% agree with everything he said. Is that maybe, true storytelling, and it might force us humans to get better at storytelling, right. and really, and then that way independent films and things that really break the mold and are super, exciting and electric are just really stick out even more so.
What if I'm someone who's not very articulate, but I think in pictures, and so I can then create something to show you what I mean, and it's not exactly that, to limits of infinity, it's moving towards that. So then you give me a chance, whereas before in traditional ways, you wouldn't give me the chance.
Yeah.
Or I give myself the chance and permission, right? And to speak about what you're saying, Chris, about all these actors and bringing actors from the past, we've already done that. We did it with Harrison Ford, and it didn't make the movie better. It actually failed.
With Oliver Reed in Gladiator.
Right.
There was like
Peter Cushing in Star Wars Rogue One.
Yeah.
The other part too is that what the people working on this reanimation, this digital reanimation of actors, is forgetting is that you're only going to be stuck with the performances they ever gave. You're never going to understand their method and how they come to the performances that actually make them stand out. You can get everything from Marlon Brando at his peak performances from A Streetcar Named Desire to On the Waterfront and to Godfather. And all you're going to get is a homogenized reconciliation of all those three into a new performance. You're not going to get what Marlon Brando would have actually brought to that role. You're never going to capture the real thing. The same thing with Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep never does the same role twice. And whenever she does a role, it stands out and it makes people like very profound. It's a profound performance every single time.
For now, there's even in the writing programs
that because
they have ethics. They have an ethical program that it will look at it ethically. It will look at it emotionally. It will look at, based on the data.
Yes.
Why can't you, if you can create music now that has flaws in the human voice, why can't you create tics in an AI performance?
Because choices are a lot more different than are not function on the same thing as a mathematical formula or algorithm. For instance, you could definitely take a role and say, okay, Meryl Streep, this is a new character. This is the script. Here we go. You then punch that same into an AI that's got a Meryl Streep thing. You're going to get 100% of the time two different performances because the AI is not going to pick something imaginative or creative to execute that role, but Meryl Streep will.
But it will pick it if it knows that a train is heading down the tracks and there's someone tied to the tracks. It will then have an input and an output to know that this certain set of 50 reactions are probably the most likely reactions, and then fine tune that reaction for that moment. Not now, but I could see it happening.
I think something else.
The variability. What if the actor says, "I would never have done that"? and
But-
yet it's on the screen. Therefore,
But
you
they're
got
fired
something
because
where-
I hired the AI person in their likeness. So, and I
What-
paid them Bruce Willis $3 million to do it. No.
One of the things we have to consider is that this isn't real AI. This is generative. If Kurzweil's singularity happens and we have actual artificial intelligence, real self-aware artificial intelligence, then all bets are off. Then we live in and this is not that far away. This generative AI isn't really artificial intelligence at all. It's just predictive algorithms taken to a much larger degree and a much more three-dimensional degree. But once you have, they were talking about Scarlett Johansson's voice from Her being used, that came up today. Not being, they're going to say you can't use real people's voices or characters from films. But once we have real artificial intelligence that can interpret data and with the added element of self-awareness to it, I can't even begin to imagine how this is going to shatter most of human civilization. It's not going to replace watching a jazz trio in a smoky Parisian club at 2:00 in the morning until they couple it with robots, replicants, whatever. But I don't think it'll ever replace watching. Like, I love watching videos of dudes like playing pianos in European stores or train stations, and then some little girl comes up and makes a request, can you play this? And then he'll start playing something and a bunch of people join in because they've got their instruments with them. That will never be replaced as long as you can still go there and actually watch it happen. But
Robert, I'm not the Dune scholar you are. What is the law that no
the
human
Butlerian jihad?
No computer can have human thought?
It can't. You cannot create a machine that replicates the human mind.
There you go.
And there's
That's
a whole.
why mentats exist. Yeah,
that's why mentats exist, and that was what the Butlerian jihad was all about. And we're going to get there. It's just going to take us a while, and who knows what's going to happen. I mean, the real question comes down to an existential one. I keep going back to, if you haven't read Yuval Harari's 2 books, Sapiens and Homo Deus. Sapiens is a very entertaining, rollicking 100,000-year history of the human animal, and in a very entertaining way. And at the end of that book, he asks, we must decide as the one race of human beings on this planet, and there's only one race of us, who and what we are going to be. What do we want to be? What does the human animal expect to be? Which we don't have an answer for, but we better figure it out, because if we don't, we will be in a world of hurt, because these are questions. We're at the very leading edge or whatever of something that is a gigantic Mount Olympus that's going to be dropped on our heads. And just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should do a thing. But we're not going to put that genie in the bottle, but we certainly can ask ourselves, what do we want it to be?
I imagine there would be a divergence of 2 groups, right? AI that helps people kind of multiply what they can do, their skill level even better, and take it to a next level. And then another group that just gets so lazy with it, they make it do the work for them and don't add anything. And that could be the kind of strata of it, I think, and somewhere in the middle too. So I think that's why it's such a hard thing to talk about.
That's the beauty of the competitive marketplace, because they'll decide. The audience will decide. There will always be like auteurs, artists like you, no matter what happens. Mm-hmm. Hollywood will adapt, and then you'll have degenerate YouTubers like me who are just trying to take what's in our heads and make it as easily as possible with whatever tools we can afford. And it'll happen, and then let the stories duke it out.
And both can be true, right?
Yeah.
I mean, being on YouTube, it'll be great when we can generate ourselves. There's enough of me on my YouTube channel. I would love to press a button. It'll just make a Robservations episode with whatever it decides to do, and no one will know the difference. Bring it on.
No, we'll know, because you'll be saying the same points about how terrible current day Star Trek is in every of the videos, because that's the majority of the content it's going to recognize with the most engagement. Because again, it's going to take some of your own philosophical aspects and the articles you find, and not going to be registering that, because it's all going to feed into, well, what's going to be the best benefit for the user in doing this. And that also goes into what Ramesh was saying, is that, yes, I fully agree that there's going to be a new idol class that is just going to be completely dependent on AI and the technology that comes with it.
Like
and
Wally.
and it's going to actually have a similar effect. That's what's happened over the last eight or 9 years when it comes to new talent entering the industry, where instead of them going through the crucible to vet them and to make sure that they're actually worthy and able to compete in this environment, they are pulled up by other people because of certain immutable aspects of them, and then put forth towards the lion's den, and they fail. And as a result, everybody else suffers. The industry starts losing money. Audiences start distrusting the content that's being released to them. They don't want to go there anymore. They're going to alternatives. There's nothing of magic that is presented with the filmmaking or storytelling industry anymore, because certain people and certain tools are being pulled ahead of their normal rate of growth.
Script, I wonder if there is a sort of like classism that develops, because that's what I always say. It's kind of a classism in art and film. I worked on, to this point, I worked on one of the first volume shoots on Netflix for a commercial, and they scanned everyone in just in case we didn't get the shots, and we shot all in the volume. It took so long to generate everything and do everything. You just put all your post on the front end, but the costs were so exorbitant. This was supposed to be the new future, the new horizon of filmmaking. And all I thought was, I'm making Wizard of Oz with a backing and a foreground element and actors in between. And it was like, I felt like I was back in the 40s and 50s, right? So I wonder if there will be a Warren, you can speak to this, a monetization of certain tools that certain people get at a certain level, just like digital filmmaking was supposed to make everything cheaper and it doesn't. And then your access to other things. I mean, even ChatGPT, I noticed recently there was a thing I go on Reddit more than anything, and people were saying, I'm getting this rules violation. I can't get anything to come out because I'm putting something, they're locking things. There's certain things being locked. But I wonder if people have certain access to things that other people don't, and it's in their interest to create these sort of class, I guess, structure, if you will.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, we have 2,500 people watching live. We have a lot of super chats. We will read them all, I promise. I want to point something out real quick. You're asking, when is an AI movie going to be here? It's here. We reviewed it on Film Threat. A movie called Window Seat. Go to filmthreat.com. Alan Ing reviewed it. I don't know. It didn't get a very good review. Got a, what was this here? A 5 out of 10. That's kind of high. Alan, what did you think? And we're going to watch a bit of the trailer. But everything in the movie is AI. The actors,
the script is AI, the acting is AI, the animation is AI, everything is AI.
Even the audience
it's not a good,
AI.
It's not a good movie. Part of it is because if it's difficult to actually create a character in AI and then hold that character's look throughout the whole thing. Obviously, AI can't fully render things well. Like the airplanes look weird. Jumps between nuns that look human and nuns that look like cartoons. But I'm sure this all get better over time. Yeah, there you go.
There it is. This is your AI movie. There's no audio, but the script, the actors, maybe watching this for a minute would be fine, but seeing this as an entire feature, how long is it? It's like 60, 70 minutes?
Yeah, close to an hour, around an hour.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I still thinking a human story.
You see that guy had 7 fingers.
Oh, really? Yeah.
There's too many close-ups. It feels like bad TV.
Yeah, and you can only, I think they use Mid-Journey. I think you're only allowed like 20 seconds per clip maximum or something like that.
Again, great for a treatment for a pitch deck.
Yeah, which a lot of people are using today. They're basically getting, okay, this is our cast list. Let's import their images. Let's put them in these costumes. Let's put them across a couple of quick shots. And then you throw it into a pitch deck and people are like, oh, I get exactly what you're coming from. Let's do it. The question being is like, are you going to do it practical, or is the executive going to say, well, since you started this in AI, why don't you just run it out in AI so we can save ourselves a few $1 million?
So long as it makes advertising better ads, it'll be great. Because right now
or more convincing to the executives that don't know how to make movies. Because that's the other part too, right? Like they just don't know how to make movies.
I was gonna say, just add one quick thing, because I'm in the Writers Guild, and the way I believe it works, because I haven't seen it in action yet, is that the studio, talking about what you guys are saying with the studio execs, can create a script, except they have to give a human writer credit on it or bring a human writer in. So what I believe is going to happen is they're going to write a bunch of stuff, and they're going to pay John August $1 million to do a rewrite, and they're going to put from the maker of this, and he's going to spend 2 days on it, and it's their generated script. I mean, I don't think the WJ had any way to get around that. It's not their fault because it's all new territory, but I think that's going to happen at studio level.
It's already happening, but the irony is that, and this is a stipulation in the NBA, the writer doesn't have to use that existing script when they're called to rewrite it. They can just throw it all out and do their whole thing, because then it makes it a lot easier to say it's a sole credit and it's now just no WA, where the initial script is at best an outline, but a discarded one because it doesn't work to the parameters that are needed by the studio. So therefore you don't even have to use the AI, which actually just goes back into the original argument that the union had, which is that using AI on the creative side of things is really just a waste of your time and money.
But isn't it funny too? And I'll mention, Warren, you had a great video on unions, that the strike was about having a minimum of writers and pay to go and do something. And now AI will reduce that. So we're at like opposing sort of ideas of how we're going to
on that, brother.
Quick shout out to Damon Packard, Damon Packard is a renowned underground filmmaker. I've known him for years, and he has been doing experiments with AI. Look up his name on YouTube. Look up Damon Packard. Subscribe to his channel. He has done some brilliantly inspired. He did a behind the scenes of David Lynch's Dune that is phenomenal. So Damon, thank you. He says, I love AI. The sooner it destroys everything, the better. But he
Reflections of Evil, man. It lasts forever.
Oh, so good. He's such a brilliant. Go to his channel. His stuff is phenomenal. Like Filmmaker Magazine did an article about Damon just because his videos have all blown up, because there are real creative views of AI. I'm sorry to we're getting a lot of comments. Thank you, Damon. But Alan, could you help and read these supers here?
By the way, with Rumble, there's 3,200 people watching. So welcome everybody.
Wow, this is great. Here we go.
Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, sign up as a member, and join us on Discord and Rumble.
Here we go.
All right, let's start this off. From Pilgrim Media for $2. Thank you. Missed you, Frank. I hope you're okay. From Red French Moon for €2. This is a great panel, I must say. From Daneska for €2 again. Warren Smith, you're awesome. Don't give up.
Thank you.
All right, from Darius for 10. The future of AI is the enterprise computer. It does not create, but it can compile a D&D adventure on the holodeck referencing a library of literature, or give an encyclopedia report based on keyword data. All right, from Shinatsky for $1.99. Thank you. Hollywood already is destroying itself. See J.J. Abrams. Or is J.J. an AI? Jay for $5. It's great to see you doing okay, Chris. Happy birthday, R&B. You can place R&B with AI during the show and see how many times it uses verisimilitude. From Dr. Fauci's prison butt for $5. Thank you. But Larry and Jihad, I'm not kidding. It's the only way. Humanity is for humans. The idea that no one will know how to create, do, or anything is disgusting. Julio Scissors gives us $10. Thank you, Julio. And becomes a new member. Enjoy those perks. From Oilers Workshop for $4.99. Watch Airhead. Super well made short film made by Sora AI. It's great, scarily great. All right, have to look that one up. From Robo Hector, yeah, we got that one. Something tells me this kind of conversation happened whenever television was invented or the computer. Yeah, anytime there's technology. Let's see, DVDs too. Ghost text for $20. If we look at Google search, generative experience killing off indie web publishing to prioritize its own answers. There's no market left. Big tech is exploiting the people's media as a smokescreen for Black Mirror outcomes.
Yeah, we need a new season of Black Mirror, but I would just call it reality at this stage. Thank you. These are very
we need more
generous.
diverse internet, because right now, for a majority of people, the internet is just Google and YouTube. And
Yeah.
Facebook to a lesser extent. Like, where's the other areas to go?
Right.
Well, when you say Google and YouTube, you're still.
I mean, it's the same thing, but like you have the Google search and then you have YouTube, right? They provide slightly different avenues of the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. For JPTRX, member for 20 months, came late, wondering if there could be laws where media made with AI needs a warning for the audience so they can decide if they want to support it.
There's some kind of copyright stuff they haven't figured out just yet. If you can copyright something, if you create it with ChatGPT, which is pulling from other things off the internet. I don't know.
There's a couple of court cases where it's ruled so far that AI cannot be copywritten and protected. And then I think it's going to appeals. And then they're also examining, well, how much is the AI being used for the work versus how much is the work being done by a human being, and how do they reconcile that and what is fair? It's going to be an ongoing debate for a while, I think.
I think, Jim, to your point, though, if there's people are getting those violation warnings from ChatGPT now by putting in certain words and texts and stuff, I wonder if part of that is a legal thing going on, that they can't promote a certain thing. So I wonder if it's like you can't talk about anything sexual or intimate or race or whatever in there, and they're trying to cover themselves. That would also create something that's very homogenized, but also there's maybe some lawsuits.
Could be.
There's also the parameters of the programmers don't want to make anything evil, or at least so they tell themselves. So they have all of these restrictions in place with regards to race, identity, offensive language, everything that they can. And they also have models that are trying to push it so that you as an individual can determine that this is actually inappropriate or not, because basically they don't want the model to eventually develop some type of algorithm where it will discriminate someone specifically because of whatever they're inputting into the AI. So there's tons of restrictions, but the funny part is that all these restrictions are creating what's called AI hallucinations, where they're returning data that's not useful at all, or sometimes just nothing, and then lock out. And I've had, because I work for a private AI company to basically make sure that they're not doing creative stuff. And every time they send me a new bot to interact with, they keep on challenging me that I can't crash it. And every time I can, because you just used classic Star Trek or sci-fi logic problems and they can't reconcile it, and it ends up just completely shutting down.
I want to say something, though, about what Damon Packard did, because Chris, you brought up a visit to the Dune set.
Yeah. Did you see it?
Yeah. I wanted to point out that
great.
Damon did something really interesting, because he basically did what I would say is, like, in a way, kind of Spinal Tap. He did something that was based on something that actually happened. They made a movie, they made Dune, but he added all this other stuff. Like, he made Sean Young a total wild turkey drunk, passed out on the set. She was a
lush.
So he was making a meta commentary on how all movies are made. And there was a lot of creativity, and what he did with that particular piece, and I would encourage everybody to watch it, was something really interesting, because he was commenting on the whole filmmaking process. And I think as a piece of work, it exists, even though he used AI to make it. There's a lot more going on there, because the very act of using AI to make this thing was a meta commentary on the entire industry and the problems of AI themselves through the lens of a 40-year-old movie. And there's something really interesting going on with what he's doing that is an extension of what Damon's been doing literally for decades. So I find it fascinating to look at. And that, to me, is something I think only someone like Damon using AI could have come up with. So more like that, please. I'd like to
Yeah.
see more along those lines.
Yeah, this is going to be a topic that will recur. So we will be discussing this more in the future, and we will invite Damon on the show because this is not going away.
No.
And I think AI could end up being a secret superpower for indie films, seriously, in the next 5 years.
For sure.
And I mean, and we've already seen just glimpses. Yeah, you can say, okay, those 50s Panavision things, they get kind of boring, but someone who can really tell a story can utilize those tools and make an indie movie that looks like it costs $100 million. It's going to happen.
Well, the narration,
inevitable.
Damon, I don't know if he's computer generated it, but the Dune thing that he made has narration going through it that either he wrote or something, and it feels like an actual studio press thing from what they did in the 60s and 70s for those behind the scenes. It's really clever. So there was a lot of creativity on a filmmaker's part to do this, and therein is where I think AI starts to get really interesting.
There'll be a lot of bad art before we get good art. I mean,
just like when the digital camera came out, we had a lot of bad
iPhone. They say you can make. They always say, "Hey, you have an iPhone. Make a film on your iPhone." How many iPhone films have you seen besides Tangerine? I mean, I don't know.
Unsane and High Flying Bird by Soderbergh.
Yeah.
There you go.
We got 3.
There's a lot of indie films being done on.
Where's the Dogma 95 of AI movies? Who's
Dogma 2024? Exactly.
Yeah, where's that? We need it. We need those rules.
That's what I'm saying. So AI is at everyone's fingertips, but we'll see. We'll see how people overcome inertia of their couch and make stuff, right? Because making stuff is hard. Coming up with ideas is hard.
Yeah. There's a chat comment here, Alan, if you would read it, that brings up a good question.
All right. So from RMVFX, AI is too DEI. Try typing 4 white people into Midjourney and you get 2 or 3 black people every time. What the fuck?
Yep, that's part of those safety parameters that are ingrained into a lot of AI models right now. Again, there's this apprehension about risking offense, which is why you can probably never use AI to generate a legitimately good comedy, because it won't let you say things or do things. Or okay, if you want to try to do airplane in AI would not understand that you have a jet airplane with old propeller motors audio sounds laid over top of it. It would not get the joke, and it would constantly keep rechanging it to go back to normal jet engines.
Well, very famously, Spock from Star Trek never understood humor. That was the interesting dynamic with him and McCoy. McCoy had a sense of humor. Spock didn't get it. That was funny. So AI is like Spock, basically.
He got it. He just pretended he didn't.
You think so? Okay.
Has anyone seen David Clark's Instagram? It's called The Blasian. And he uses Runaway and Sora and makes some of the most amazing sort of poetic little short films. I mean, they're truly pieces of art. Again, he's called The Blasian, Blasian. And he actually met with, Ridley Scott met with him to talk about his work and how he's doing it. Because I think, again, Ridley Scott's someone who, whatever you think about his movies, is a guy who's a flexible mindset, who's looking for the next thing to utilize and see how it can work for his filmmaking. But just check out his stuff. That's something that's very positive and really cool being made.
Yeah. Here's another chat comment here. Greg Williams, if the technology is there, I could absolutely make a better Star Wars film than KK and Lucasfilm. Somebody already did What If Episode 7 was awesome, and sort of seriously used AI to create images and then told the basic story, and it was much better than.
But that's also leading to something of a problem that we've been facing in the entertainment industry for over a decade. You cannot have someone come into the industry and rate themselves against the worst that's out there, because all you're doing is just basically reestablishing where the bar is. You've got to come in and be like, okay, what's my favorite film? What's the best film that people have seen in the last 2 decades? All right, I got to find a way to try and rise to that or surpass it. And if you don't have that, then what we get is well, what we've seen over the last 6-7 years. Yes, you can have an AI that does something better than Star Wars. Fantastic. ChatGPT already can do something better than Star Wars. You're not impressing anybody with that. This industry is all about being able to impress people with your creativity, your imagination, and your ingenuity. And if you don't have that, then even no matter if tools that you have access to are not going to set you apart from everyone else that you're competing against.
It's even more important to have a unique voice, a unique point of view.
And
I think
AI at its core is just all derivative. Sorry, Jim.
Yes.
I was going to say, one thing too is like if AI starts going the way we're talking about stuff, the next few years, there's already so many movies. We've seen Marvel movies that have been made by committee. They're horrible. They're generic. And AI adds to that, and studios and TV shows and TV networks start making more and more of those. I think what's going to become huge is things that aren't controllable, because that's more like Law and Order, where the chaotic side is going to be sports, reality, and hopefully indie films, the things that are just so like out of the box and chaotic, because more and more it's going to become just more and more like the generic stuff we've seen. So I think there's a great opportunity for indie filmmakers to really just go fucking crazy, like 1992, 93. Just do whatever you got to do, because that chaotic aspect is what I think is going to appeal to people.
Well, that chaotic aspect should never have really gone away or been tempered down, because that's what gives Hollywood new life every time. You do something in indie a couple of times, you show your merit. Hollywood says, hey, let's throw some money after you. And then all of a sudden they get a boom if you hit well. And if you don't hit well, at least you brought some new life in there. You've expanded the conversation. You brought in new blood. Where's the new blood in the last generation?
Yeah. I should hang out with Doctor more often, because I say something kind of not so intelligent. He makes it sound so much better.
It's like an AI.
I'll be in LA in 6 weeks, Jim. I'll take you out to lunch.
Hey, hit me up, script.
I will.
Yeah.
I'll hit everybody.
We're all
up.
going out. We'll go to the frolic room.
Well, yeah, we'll go to Jumbo's. Real quick, some encouraging news out of Cannes. Has anyone been paying attention to this? Kevin Costner's Western got a 7-minute standing ovation.
Really?
Yeah.
Horizon.
The French love cowboys.
Yes, he put up 4 of his houses to get this movie made,
Good
put
for
the
him.
financing together, and I'm so excited for this film now. Oh God, why am I spacing on the name?
Yeah.
Horizon.
It's called Horizon, and it's one of 4 parts. There's 4 feature films that he's doing. So one house for each feature film.
He's doing his Avatar, huh?
But I saw he was getting all choked up. I saw the video of it just based on the reaction.
That's great.
So I cannot wait, because
Cronenberg's new movie screened today.
Yeah, I loved Dances with Wolves. I'm sorry. You can, I think it still holds up. That beautiful score, the music from Dances with Wolves, so good.
I love
John Barry.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically Avatar. So, yeah.
There's been some really interesting films that debuted at Cannes over the last week. That Demi Moore movie, is it called The Substance? The horror film with Margaret Qualley and her. Sounds amazing.
Can't wait for Megalopolis, because I have no idea what that movie's going to be.
Speaking of, what someone said here about having a scene in a movie and like the Fahrenheit 451, right? The interaction between audience and film, that has it. Megalopolis, or however you say it. Right? It's got that moment in it. Spoiler alert.
We have a lot of super chats, Alan. I'm going to put you to work.
All right.
Starting from the top.
From Stubby McShave for 50 Swedish krona. It looks like Rob and Chris had a Star Wars style transporter accident. The beards have transmigrated.
Really? Wait, I gotta check this. Did we?
Yeah, what happened?
I shaved, man.
I mean, Chris, the pressure is on you to keep the beard. We're just gonna pass the beard amongst all the YouTubers.
Chris has always looked like William Shatner to me, a version of William Shatner.
I'll take it.
All right, from Natural Black, from 999. Oh, Neutral Black, sorry, for 999. Great news story created today on novel sites vetted by real people. Next billion-dollar IP example: Shadow Slave, a super popular. I would love if WB picked this one up. I'm sure that means something. from accident seller for 15 Norwegian krona. How ironic would it be if someone used AI to make the true sequel to Terminator 2, and the side effect is Skynet becomes sentient in real life? All right.
Happen.
And then lastly, from Aron Charman for £5, ideas are hard, and so is streaming.
There you go.
That's what makes ideas beautiful, is that they're hard. People love a great idea, and if you can tell it well, I mean, you're sitting in good standing with everybody.
Oh, we have one Rumble rant, by the way, that just came in.
Sure. Sorry about that, Alan.
Yes, from Rumble, from Caveat Tie supporter for $2. Thank you. I grew up with horses that were in Dances with Wolves.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah. Hope you got their autograph.
So Hollywood is already in trouble. I mean, the last year, the strikes, basically the failure, the flopbuster, last year's flopbusters. I think we're going to see more flopbusters. It's hard to say. Like The Fall Guy. I love the movie. It was fun. It was the most entertaining I've seen this year. It's not going to win Oscars, but whatever. The fact that movie tanked, I think a lot of trust has been broken.
Yes.
And now I think AI is only going to make things worse. What are some of your predictions about AI in the industry as it is right now? And just jump in.
Oh, sorry. I think we're on the cusp of, like you were saying, Chris, somebody was saying this, on the cusp of that new indie 90s wave that we've been missing. And I think it's just coming because production costs are just so high in the industry, in the traditional industry. I think we're going to be seeing an alternative model that I have never seen in my lifetime. Other companies coming in. We'll see what happens. Things like Daily Wire.
Jim, you are a film producer as well as a screenwriter. How are you? I mean, and you've effectively just said, hey, I'm going to make my own stuff. Forget Hollywood. So what do you see as coming?
It's like what Warren said, it's right now you can't. I've produced and made a few like $10 million films, and then over the years they've become $5 million films, and now they're like $2 million films. And they're the same kind of films. And even right now, I've got one film that's at Cannes, and they're putting the financing together, and I'm not going to say who, but there's two big actors on it, and literally, it's the financing being put together like we joke Scotch tape and like paper clips, because it's so hard right now to get financing for a film. And this is a film, we have a distribution deal with Lionsgate. It's not like a joke film, but to make the numbers work, we have to use tax credits in a foreign country. We have to do this, we have to do that, we have to do this. That kind of like business model is almost done. The Emmett Furla, you've seen a million of those. They can't even make those anymore. So it's got to become very indie. They're not paying anything for films right now. So I think actors are starting to get it, and their prices are really coming down fast because there isn't TV for them to rely on anymore. But it's like Warren said, it's going to be like really the only way the film industry survives in the indie film industry is like it has to be like 92, 93, 94. People have to get out there, find ways to make a movie for $400,000 that's just so badass everybody has to see it.
Not only that, finding a new distribution model, because right now, like, there's a lot of competition, but a lot of those models do not pay as well. You can get a Netflix deal, but guess what? For most Netflix deals, you don't get paid until after the run is complete. So you have to go X amount of years without any money in, and then Netflix tells you, well, this is the number that it's worth. Here you go. So long, goodbye. Same thing with Tubi. Tubi, you get a small percentage as well based on the ad revenue that comes in. The financing has always been the biggest challenge, even though it's been getting cheaper and cheaper to buy the technology. Getting the money together to pay the people to operate it and to keep them on from completion is also a huge struggle that's already plagued indie film that since I started, where you'd have editors that you're paying them, and then all of a sudden they get a job that pays a little bit more, and they say, well, priorities means I have to go leave this project temporarily to go work on this, which means that your post-production is now delayed X amount of months until that person comes back, or you find another editor, in which case now you're out twice the cost. And so those things have to be kind of reined in as well, because it's like I've got friends that are already at con right now trying to get pre-sales and distribution deals done there. And to Jim's point, it's a nightmare just trying to navigate everything so that it all works out so that you can actually afford to, roll film on a production and then get it released so that people can actually watch it. Because right now we've had over the last 5 years a massive oversaturation on the TV side of things, to the point where a hit show has like a 3.4 market share, as opposed back when I was starting out, that was considered pretty bad. And even a decade before that, well, I was immediate cancellation. But now, if you have a 3.4 market share, people are like, well, that's a hit. When, growing up as a kid in the 80s, 8 was considered, oh, you're on touchy ground right now. And because you have to get those double digits. So the whole market is completely changing. And in order for indie to actually survive and thrive, we need to find other means of just getting that stuff out to audiences so that they can see it, pay for it, share it. And because Hollywood has done the dumbest thing ever with streaming by basically chewing up their own network model and then taking their streaming platform as a competitor to it, as opposed to what it should have been, which is an archive that uses the exact same network model to generate ads and just have it basically a portable. It's like the portable TV when that came out in the late 70s, early 80s. You still saw commercials on that, and it was free and it was charged, but you could take it around. You could go to the parking lot of a baseball game, watch the game, be technically at the game at the same time, listen to it, see it, but be out there and it'd still make money for the broadcasters. Same thing would have happened to streaming if they kept an ad model in place. You're just watching it on your phone now, but they took away the ads and they replaced it with a subscription fee, which now people are like saying, well, now that's just like cable, which is what a whole bunch of us writers and other producers were predicting when Netflix started doing the original programming a decade ago, is you're just creating the new cable. And the fact that the suits at the studios didn't realize that and didn't take advantage of that has actually skewered not just the TV development process with the oversaturation of content, but it's also skewered the ability for them to generate money and be sustainable, because what sustains Hollywood is television and, oddly enough, comedy feature films, because they're a domestic product that people go and see to laugh. And when you don't have comedy anymore because it doesn't sell internationally at the same rate that the tentpole movies have, you therefore have gutted your system. And already we've seen in the last 6 months, Max, Paramount Plus, Disney, all start going towards an ad-dependent model, which is now upsetting customers that thought they were never going to have that to begin with in the first place, when they really should have originally said, hey, it's now all the TV shows that you want to see, everything that you missed, you can now stream it on our channel. It's for the same price as your ISP bill. It has commercial ads, but guess what? It's convenient. It's at your fingertips. It's on demand. You don't have to worry about torrents or downloading or any of that stuff. You just log in, click on it. If you missed last night's show of The Office, guess what? 24 hours later, boom, it's on Hulu. You're good to go. And they still make the revenue, because again, the revenue from ads is what pays for Hollywood. And if you cut that out and replace it with, DTC, you're never going to make the amount of money, because it's not going to have the same amount of value. A direct to customer profit is what, like $5 to $15 a month on a subscription fee. Or if you have a hit show with 7 million people watching it, you can charge through the nose for just a 90-second commercial ad on that and pay for the show in one commercial ad. And then everything else after that pays for whatever else you want to do. That model has been almost killed by the studios and their arrogance in running this.
Well, you just hit on a point I think we want to explore: the model, right? Hollywood is hit hard times. Rob, as you pointed out, cinema is the art form of the 20th century. The 21st century is video games. It's video games and internet entertainment like TikTok. So how is Hollywood already being hit with lots of middle management bloat and a lot of other things that don't really have anything to do with making a movie? I've had discussion with a lot of friends about a lot of BS that gets added to a budget. How is the business model going to change?
I think the business model is gone, to be honest. I mean, as Script pointed out, the television kept the industry afloat. Home video, sometimes they destroyed that as well. But the real question is that everybody wants to know is, if you spend money, how do your investors, or how do the people that put the money in get it back? And Hollywood has done a very good job dismantling all of those systems where you get, as Jim can speak to, any independent filmmaker, you make a movie for $2 million or less, where are you going to get your money back from? You go through any distribution entity. I think these things are going to start changing because, look, I know it's Taylor Swift I'm talking about right now, but she went right to AMC and she said, look, she was brilliant in the sense that, hey, when they went to SoFi Stadium, state-of-the-art stadium that was probably wired to do anything you wanted in terms of cameras, she probably had the best technology capturing 5 of her performances. They cut the best versions of each song together in a feature film. They went directly to AMC and said, will you put this in your theaters? No middleman. And she made a fortune. And probably wrote off the production costs as marketing anyway. Well, I think that in a way, we're going to see complete fragmentation of audiences because you're going to go, we are already going direct to our audiences with super chats and tips and memberships and all that. I mean, I'm making an audio drama, a 10-part audio drama, all written by author Max Allan Collins, who wrote the novel that Road to Perdition was based on. And we're getting pretty much a movie quality cast, even though it's only an audio drama, and I'll be going direct to my viewers. You know, we're going to put it other places, but we're going to pre-sell kind of what they did with Isom. You know, what Eric July did with his comic book. He spent $100,000 of his own money, made a comic book, went to his YouTube constituency, and made $3.5 million selling his book because people bought it from him. And I think that that's the new way to go, and it's starting small now. And it probably, I mean, I don't think that am going to make a $100 million movie anytime in my future, but I could make other movies and go direct to my audience. That's what we do. And I think that that's going to start to be maybe the norm, is everybody's going to be fragmented the way the audience is fragmented and sell directly to their viewers or their audience. And now,
sorry, go ahead, Robert.
No, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, and we'll just keep the price down.
Yeah,
AI will help.
The one thing, though, I see people make mistakes on all the time on getting films financed, especially at the indie level, is they do these pitch decks where they say, here's this great script, here's the comps, where you have to really understand, and it's not a lot of people can do this. I've been around a long time. You have to pitch, okay, I can get 30% of the money back immediately if we go shoot Alabama. If we do this. Mm-hmm. If you own real estate, you can do a 181. You have to talk to an accountant. You have to carry losses. Like, you have to understand how to talk to wealthy people and show them that even if you can't make the money back, they'll make money by showing a loss. I mean, I'm really getting weeds here, but you have to.
No, but you're right.
On the indie side, everybody always thinks it's the idea and stuff. You can get money, and you can get money for films, but you have to kind of understand how, like you guys are saying, how to pay back your investors one way or another. So it's about 2 cents.
I mean, that's for indie film. That's the key. How do you get money from people? They have to know that they're going to get paid back, and they have to get paid back 15%, 20%, 30% if you can. The studios are making movies that they're just going in the hole for. It's amazing to me how much movies are look, if the Ryan Reynolds film that John Krasinski made, why is that movie over $100 million? It's insane to me that movie cost over $100 million. How and by what metric did they think that movie was going to make money?
They didn't, but they saw $100 million and thought that's a lot easier to steal from than a $20 million movie.
There is that.
Has that movie come out yet? Has that come out?
It opened this weekend, and it opened at $35 million.
Ooh, and it's a kids film, right?
It's basically a kids movie,
with no kids films out. Interesting.
And you've got an A-list voice cast for all the creatures, and I understand that people, I mean, Clooney, I don't know how much they made, but you know, I don't understand where Hollywood's and with all the effects technology, and look, if I was going to make a movie like that, I would go hire the entire team that did Godzilla -1, the 35 people that made that great behind the scenes video, and go, Hollywood has forgotten how to make movies. These people know how. We can take these 35 people with one ship set that with green screen can, if you know how to do this, Hollywood has completely forgotten how to make movies. There's nobody, as a matter of fact, you know, my first job was I worked in feature film production. I worked in physical production at Warner Brothers for the senior vice president of feature production. That was 30 years ago. The people at the studios now do not know how to make movies. They physically don't know how to make movies. No one who works there has made movies before. They don't know how. And the inflated costs. That's why people like Tyler Perry used his money and built his own studio. Peter Jackson used studio money and built his own studio. Now is renting back his equipment to them. I mean, that's the way to do it. because the
Rob,
business forgot how to run. The business of Hollywood forgot what their core business was: make entertaining product and sell it to your audience. That was how it worked up until about the last 10 years.
And they don't even plan anymore. Like, have you seen pre-production plans for some of the tentpole films circulating around over the last few years? I have. They're fractions. There's not a completed script. All they have is a scheduled release date and a director and a cast. It's like, that's where the more you plan, the less you spend in production.
I mean, Rob, you and I have been around indie film
A long time.
since the 90s. Yeah, exactly. And you've seen the business model change. Used to
Entirely
be
changed.
Theatrical was a revenue stream, home video revenue stream, overseas sales revenue stream, and streaming has basically killed all those.
It killed it all.
It's like the
Streaming
music
should have
industry,
been-
right? It's like the music industry, and then CDs went, and then streaming. Why did they not think the same thing would happen when you devalue the product? When you're going to have Scorsese and probably Spielberg at some point on Netflix, and it becomes, streaming killed the radio star or the video star in this case.
Yeah, because streaming should have been the last entry point of all media. It should be theatrical, international, home video, broadcast, streaming. And
there was always this theory that you never cast a TV actor in your movie, right? And then I think George Clooney would change that a little. That was the old adage. And then I think it still applies, though, and why Tom Cruise will not do a streaming movie, because he knows his value is to be that scarcity in the you want to see him, you have to see him in the theater. There's something about not getting everything you want, not being so accessible, that makes it precious and makes it more interesting and more valuable in a psychological way.
Mm-hmm.
But now the pie is thinner and thinner slivers of the pie.
Right.
I mean, I joke, there are more indie movies made in a year, more things made, pieces of media, than there are outlets to cover them. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. The amount.
I think streaming platforms are competing with YouTube. I think they're shaken by YouTube. If you're just talking about eyeball time, and not quality of content, I understand. Like, YouTube is not putting out original content like that. But if you're just purely measuring eyeball time, and then even as celebrities lose influence, like we were just talking about, Tom Cruise is able to preserve his. Influencers, YouTubers are rising in prominence. We see Angel Studios. I did mention Daily Wire earlier, but I think that they understand that they're not there yet, but they're bringing in YouTube personalities. I think these new forms of public figures are potentially the future.
Well, it's funny that you say that. I got a lot of flack for when they picked up Run, Hide, Fight for distribution, which I think Daily Wire's first film. I was reporting on it as, hey, this is interesting for all you indie filmmakers out there. Here is a new distributor that is distributing their films to their subscribers. Yeah. The Daily Wire had 5 million subscribers, and for me, it wasn't about politics of the Daily Wire. It was about a new distribution entity, and they're using a new distribution model, and they're going directly to their subscribers, and they're making it work. And now Angel Studios, when they bought back Sound of Freedom, and they put out that really interesting science fiction horror fantasy film recently with Neil McDonough called The Shift.
Alan, you saw it.
The Shift.
Yes, I saw The Shift. Yes, The Shift.
I mean, that was sort of interesting, and sure, there's a political, religious bent to this stuff, but hey, indie distributor, somebody else putting stuff out there using a new distribution model.
Yeah, they found an audience. And now we see Daily Wire creating original content that's not going on YouTube, it's staying behind their paywall.
That's right.
It's silly stuff like the Judge with Matt Walsh or whatever it is, but they've got a business model. They built their audience by any means necessary, launched products left and right to raise financing, and now they are competing with Hollywood. That's what I mean by we've never seen competition. potentially.
competing in the sense that they're getting eyeballs, but they're not competing in quality. Because I've seen Mr. Bertram, I've seen Lady Ballers. These are very terrible reactionary content that really is not going to stand the test of time. Heck, I've even seen on social media so many people that are Daily Wire subscribers say, I'm not watching this because it's got these types of characters in their very own show that they're counterculture to. I think the Daily Wire is a great option for distribution. I don't think they should be doing their own original content, because these are guys who, let's not mince words, they were essentially failed out of Hollywood. They gave up because they stopped getting calls and stopped pushing forward. They started their own thing, which was great for them. It worked. They hit the audience that needs the type of content they're doing. But now they're kind of trying to inch back and be like, hey, we are really this good. Come look at our stuff. And when we actually see their stuff, we're like, no, Hollywood 20 years ago was absolutely right to actually not buy stuff that you make because it sucks. Like, you got the money.
They only made one movie, and we're about to see Pendragon Cycle, which
Pendragon Cycle.
We don't know yet.
And then
if it hits, it could change everything.
I mean,
perhaps, but I don't think there's Snow White is going to hit either, because they're making that only as a reaction to Disney doing Snow White, which is a terrible motivation to make a project. Yeah, like, where's the originality to them to try and do stuff? Like Mr. Bertram is a reaction to like Family Guy and other things. Like reaction isn't as much of a creative venture as people kind of think it is on the surface. Like, there's got to be something more behind it than just I'm reacting to this thing that's happened just recently.
But if you take that out of it and think about it just as a business, and the fact is they're disrupting things, and they're obviously catering to their audience like anybody does. Look, I worked at Full Moon Entertainment for a long time for Charlie Band in the early 90s. Not a long time, but a couple of years. And it was really interesting. We were putting out a movie a month. And we had a certain audience, Paramount. We had a distribution deal through Paramount, and then Charlie started pocketing more and more and more of our films that were $1 million. They're making one a month. They had a huge thing, and then as people get greedy and money went away, the quality of the film suffered, and the audience started to dip. And it always comes back to catering to an audience, giving them, even if you're giving them exploitation and low budget ripoffs of bigger budget movies, the way the Asylum sort of continue that on with their Sharknado movies or whatever. If you have that, if you can cultivate that audience, and service that audience and get that money coming in, you hold on to that audience and don't let them down. Give them what they want and keep the quality up, even if you're making, Sharknado 7.
I'll watch Bubba Hotep any day.
By the way, Sharknado, directed by Anthony Ferrante, who was a writer for Film Threat in the 90s.
And the other part too is, where's the cool sense of style in film now? Like, they seem so kind of bland. Like, you could take the last 5 big films and intercut them and various scenes together, and probably general audiences think they're all one movie. Because I think, to the point with Chris was showing with those AI generated things of the 1950s films, one thing that I can say was quite fascinating is that the costumes and the filming style and the aesthetics to it were refreshing, even though they were kind of retro. It's like, I would like to see something with a little bit more stylization inside of the frame these days. Where is that? Is it really too expensive, or are people just too afraid to jump in there to see if audiences will actually grasp onto something like that?
I think it's also because so many things are done by committee now at studio level. Like, it's almost like films have gone the way of TV shows. And that's why Marvel hires the people they do. They can push them around and tell them what to do. Same thing with just like TV. It's not a visual. There's nobody at the top who has that vision, who can say, no, we're going to do this like a Quentin Tarantino can, or Scorsese.
Right. It's a race to the center, and they're softening the edges, right? Just like advertising. And to your point, no one really watches films. No one has that film knowledge. That's why you're not going to get, not even stylistically, but stories like Dog Day Afternoon. That's a kind of progressive in terms of forward-thinking story, right? Why are they robbing the bank? So he can have a sex change? I mean, this is what, 1974, 75? Right. I mean, it's pretty interesting, a lot of those, but no one watches a lot of the older films.
There's about 10% of studio execs know everything, and the other 90% know nothing. Really?
Correct.
Yeah, and that number gets smaller all the time. In fact, to your point, didn't John Boyega just do a movie where he's taking a bank hostage recently, like past couple of years?
I saw that film,
and nobody talked about it, even though it looked fantastic.
It's based on a true story. I saw it. Yeah. It was okay. In fact, I was going to say to Alan, we see On Friday, we have our live cast. We review every movie that opens that day. We don't always both get to see them. We kind of divide and conquer, but we see all the movies. And much of our reaction is, well, that was okay. Well, that was just forgettable. Or that was, I mean, very rarely is there the words movies we're both excited about. What was that movie last week we both hated? Oh, Babes.
Babes, yeah.
Babes, yeah, that was
No
yeah.
wonder
It wasn't
the
made for us.
industry
It
would
wasn't made
embrace
for us.
AI.
Sorry. Good.
No wonder the industry would embrace AI, because if they're making these very bland, vanilla, Wonder Bread movies, it's not a reach to let's just make that easier for us to do, right? But I think, to your point, I think it is going to be like, I love Jim Jarmusch, and I've always been someone myself who've zagged when everyone zings. And I think if we're in the worst part of the 80s sort of again, then I think the 90s, I've told you this, Chris, since the pandemic, that was really the tipping point where it was like, okay, all bets are off. You can do anything you want because there are no guarantees. And so why not make the thing that's in your head as weird and strange as it is? I want to see the next Eraserhead, right? And hopefully it doesn't take that filmmaker 5 years to make. And I want to see the next Sex Lies videotape and the next Stranger Than Paradise, right? And the next Blood Simple. And I think we will see that because I think people are just tired of it. So it will, I think there is a groundswell that's happening.
Well, my fear is, I'm seeing interviews with Coppola that are online. Check it out. He's a master, right? No matter what, he's a master. Even if Megalopolis,
The title is too hard.
Okay,
Yes.
Chris?
no, I'm all right. Even if that movie is awful, he's a master.
Right. He swung for the fences.
Right. But who are the masters of the future?
Zack Snyder.
Silence.
Oh, God.
Who are the-
They have yet to be discovered and to be heard.
Or
Or have
are we going to
opportunity.
ever get any, because cinema just doesn't matter the way it mattered in the 20th century? Is
There's that
anyone
too.
going to love movies enough to get to be able to make the kinds of films that were made before?
Or is the studio going to give freedom to an up-and-coming filmmaker to become that great director?
No, they've been breaking those filmmakers and then leaving them to pick up their own pieces for the last decade or so.
Yes, all those filmmakers were the ones who did like Boys of Summer or whatever, who ended up doing the Kong Godzilla movie or the Godzilla movie, and then there was the David Lowery, who did Puff the Magic Dragon right after Ain't Them Body Saints. So there was a whole, sorry to cut you off, Script. There's that whole generation of filmmakers who are really interesting Sundance filmmakers. As soon as they did a really interesting indie film, they were picked up by Hollywood so quickly before they had a chance to develop their voice. And then you have a movie now. What's that Kristen Stewart movie? Where she falls in love with the bodybuilder.
Love Lies Bleeding.
Love Lies.
I feel like there's this other generation of filmmakers that go, I know what looks really cool, and I've watched all these A24 films, and I want to make my films a triptych of all these cool scenes, but they never really add up to anything. So I think that we're in this weird sort of moment of,
well, also the difference too is that the master filmmakers were men and women of letters. Whether you're talking like Agnes Varda, these are or Truffaut or Godard or Jean-Pierre Melville, or you had people like Coppola coming out. Well, yeah, I mean, they like to read, and after all, now it's a whole different. Like you were talking about, like Julia DeTournau, who made Raw and made Titane, interesting voice. She's making something new. But what if you get like Ari Aster doing riffs on what came before, like Hereditary, and then making Beau is Afraid? Where does that leave us? People are kind of spinning off into this weird, maybe up their own lenses. I mean, I don't know. And I don't know. Are we going to get them back? Are we going to get grandma? I don't think people are that interested in cinema to become grandmasters.
Well, video games are also firing people by the truckloads. So
and video games are doing. I mean, some of the storytelling. You look at some of these open games like Ghost of Tsushima, or you have Kojima. Doing whether it's Death Stranding or something new. I mean, there's auteurs coming out of video games now, which are very, very interesting. I just don't know. I love cinema so much, but I haven't seen. Look what we're getting. We're getting The Omen. 20th Century Fox or 20th Century Studios gives us The Omen, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and Alien Romulus this summer.
Shout out to Lily von Stupp, who is watching the show. Just want to say that. Jim, you were about to say something. Jump in.
What it was now. I think
build it and they will come, right?
That's
what you're going to say.
I was just saying, I don't think films are as important as they used to be, like Robert's saying, and people don't hold them in such reverence, because it's tough too, because I've got 2-3 really great scripts that are amazing, that would make just, I think, the most badass films. I can't get any traction on them, but I write a bad action thing and it's, gets made at Sony with Jean-Claude Van Damme in it and I get paid. Is that what I saw my career as? No, I love Jean-Claude Van Damme, don't get me wrong. But it's kind of this at that level, especially with like streamer or studio level, you try to do something, you can't do anything good. You cannot. I sold a TV show to ABC that was super groundbreaking like 10 years ago. Everybody got producers of Star Wars, I mean, the big showrunner in TV, Clyde Phillips was a showrunner, and it couldn't get on air because it was too cool, really, and it's just hard to make something great, it happens with like, Jonathan Nolan, he can do it, but most people can't. So
it's funny that someone just brought up like where the Peter Hyams and where the Walter Hills. I agree. There's a thing called muscular filmmaking that we don't have, and I think it's part of that. Where things were gritty and there's sometimes look at 48 Hours, very offensive and edgy, and I don't know. No one wants to make those films. Tarantino does, I think, to a certain degree. Paul Thomas Anderson, but. And I was going to ask you, Jim, why don't we've been discussing this about making your own film? When do you get to the point where you stop asking for permission and you give yourself permission? I think that's really what it's always about, is about going to the level where you can stop asking for permission. To me, that's what it's always been about.
I mean, I've been very lucky because I was on the business side before I was a writer, so I can kind of navigate the gatekeepers. And I've made a living doing this a long time, but it's not the art I thought I saw myself doing. Hey, it's great. I make a living. I'm in the WJ. All I have to do is write screenplays, but I've got a couple great ones I want to make, but I've also got a few things I realize I've got to write that are super inexpensive. I'm working on a script now that costs maybe $200,000. So, and maybe I'll put the money together myself and try to do it because it's the only way I can do something the way I want to do it, and try to make something that's good. But, there's that devil's deal of like, I'll take the money,
But remember that Tarantino story where he sold True Romance, and he may have already sold, what's the one where the serial killer's on the road? Natural Born Killers, but he had money, right? And he was like, okay, I've got whether it was 35,000, 40,000. He sold it. He's like, I'm going to make Reservoir Dogs on, at that point, VHS.
No, Super 8,
whatever it was. So it's like he had it was, in the end, it was like $1.8 million, right? Or $2 million.
Yeah.
So it's like you have that cost. You will figure out a way to make the movie, you back it in as an indie filmmaker to whatever the money you have. And it may be that one location and the two people talking and it's My Dinner at Andre, right? With guns or whatever it is. That I think you can make it, right? We get in that mindset, but I understand that it has to be done a certain way and with a certain.
I think there's also something said what you're saying too about like putting it out in the ether, just being like, I've noticed too, sometimes on projects we've said we're starting June 1st, even though we have no money or anything, and things start happening because then they're missing out.
It's the subconscious of it. Yeah.
You can't.
Jim, I'll never forget, you pitched a sci-fi movie to me like over 10 years ago. I've never forgotten the concept.
What
It
was
was such a cool concept. Do you remember?
I have a bunch of. Was it the teleportation?
Yeah. Don't say anything. It was when you told me the idea, it was so badass.
Yeah.
Never forgot about it.
Yeah.
I hope you get some traction with that. I don't know.
It was Seven Samurai in space, wasn't it?
No,
No.
I know. Oh god.
It was. I'll tell you the quick log. 2-second thing. It's just in the future, people teleport for transportation, so they sit in these big fuselages like planes and teleport. And then these terrorists like steal the people in transit, so they're running around in their backpack with like 40,000 people. Trying to get it was like a terrorist kind of movie.
Oh yeah, it's a cool hostage story. That's awesome.
Yeah, so there you go. And of course, somebody like the president's daughter, somebody was on the flight. I don't remember what it was.
You pitched me the long version. Right? I was riveted. Because it was like sci-fi action. Like it was awesome.
I think it was. Everybody had chips in their head too, and the one guy who was a military veteran had been injured and he didn't, so he was able. It was really. I don't know.
No, it was great.
Yeah, it was
great.
You can use Sora and Runway to create the pitch deck for it, right? You can shoot or use that to make the short film for it, right? Because no one reads anymore. Or you can, have a table reading or submit it to, there's so many.
Well, I mean, there's lots of avenues you can do. The biggest obstacle is that if you want to get it financed by a studio, the executives are inexperienced, are young, are terrified. They don't have the gusto anymore. If you want to try and do it yourself, maybe you can, but again, it's still an uphill battle. I've got a friend that's doing a science fiction feature with Vernon Wells, and he's got a whole bunch of other people on the docket ready to go, but you still have to raise the money to pay for them. There's no distribution deal, there's no studio financing behind it. He's doing it all himself, and he's doing fantastic with it, but it's still a lot of work because again, you can't get you have to have X amount of dollars to get certain actor involved so that certain actor unlocks X amount of dollars to pay for the rest of the production. And it ends up being, a Mobius strip of sorts where you're worried that you're going to be eating your own tail if you can't actually just get that one thing done. Whereas 30 years ago in the 90s, if you had those deals in place and you went to a studio with it, they'd be like, yeah, let's go. Okay, we won't give you all of it, but we'll give you enough starter to get you moving.
There's always been the Robert Town who used his credit cards, right? There's always been the Coen brothers who went to the dentist, their Jewish League, and got people to donate for their blood simple. There was a Tyler Perry before Tyler Perry, right? That had nothing and did it. I think the hard work becomes the gatekeeper. It's at some point, and so I think we can always talk about those deals or whatever. I mean, Jim Jarmusch owns the rights to all his movies. Whenever he releases another version on Criterion, he gets the money for it. So I think it's just everyone will figure it out. And I think those that, Bernardo Bertolucci said the one who can figure out how to get the money. They asked him, what makes the director? The one who can figure out how to make the movie to get the money to make the movie, regardless of it, right?
Yeah. But Orson Welles said he spent most of his life looking for money and not making enough films.
Like he was doing studio pictures at first, right? He was looking for a certain level, right? He wasn't doing, except for the one, what's the one on Netflix that's got John Huston and
the film got the wind. Yeah, it's not Inherit the Wind. It's something else.
But it was a certain level of money that he was looking for. He wasn't doing Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless and running down the streets.
Although I miss those movies.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
I love hearing about Vernon Wells. He was so great in The Road Warrior. We go in.
And Weird Science.
What's that?
And Weird Science.
And he's doing a movie with Tom Conkle now. A big epic.
Yeah, I was just bringing that up.
Yeah.
Don't forget Commando. Come on.
Oh, right. No.
Bennett.
We have a few more comments as we're close to wrapping. If you would read this one, Alan.
Yeah, Accident Seller for 50 Norwegian krona. Recently saw Big Trouble in Little China for the first time. What a weird and wonderful Carpenter movie. Some scenes are almost like an AI fever dream.
And a couple interesting comments.
Low Pan, I love that movie. That's one of the best movies ever.
Not super chats. These are worth.
Indeed.
From Burton Burger. I work with a lot of 20-somethings, and they have zero knowledge of any films before 2006.
That's why we think that every movie is the first time this ever happened. You know, this is the first in this movie. It's a first. Yeah, right.
It's the marketing angle. What else do they have, right? Because so much other things have been accomplished. It's like, well, it's the first time we've had this Asian, lesbian, transgender person behind production to lead a movie before. It's like, tell me about the movie itself. I don't care if it's a similar story. Can you make it sound good, as opposed to just telling me things that don't actually factor into my entertainment?
When you bid on a commercial and you talk to advertisers and you're doing a pitch, they say you never reference a movie older than 5 years.
Yes, I've heard that before.
Alan, this one.
Yes, and then from Bruce Dickinson, do any of you on the panel see positives with AI as aids to help keep the movie industry alive?
Market research would actually be really good with it, because it can hit more people instantly and it can get you all that data right away. And it's an objective data. Even if you try to program it for a slant, it will still say, well, this is the information that came to us that's outside of that you can refer to. Because right now, marketing companies, the ones that I've interacted with, they're pulling only a few thousand people, when I knew that the people that started the companies they worked at were pulling tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, just trying to figure out what the heck is going to sell. Mm-hmm. And so when you narrow that market stuff and you rely so much on social media, you end up getting really bad data, and then you end up suffering as a result of it.
You're talking about the algorithm, aren't you?
Well, there's many algorithms. Until we find out what the real algorithm is, that's always going to elude us.
You can use Claude.
I talked to a movie producer who Netflix told him the algorithm said, put this in your movie. He did, and it was his longest movie at #1 on Netflix.
It's smart. You can use Claude to do a script analysis as good probably as you would pay for. I mean, it's pretty amazing. It will give you what it lacks, what is good, what it lacks, characters, where you're not impactful, where it's lacking, it's pretty amazing. So,
well, that is going to wrap it up for us today. No, this is the first.
You're playing us out. I like that.
What?
You're playing us out. I like that.
I'm playing you guys. I'm playing you out. Thank you to everyone. There are links in the description for all of our panelists. There are links to everything we talked about. I want to thank everybody: Robert, Script, Jim, Alan, Warren, Ramesh. Please come back. We will have another conversation about AI. This isn't going to go away. It's going to change. It's going to change the industry. So I just want to say thank you to everyone else. And thank you to Atomic Glory, Lenuccio, and Armad Lord Talk today. Any final words for anyone? Final words.
Don't make your indie movies. Make a film.
Thank you.
Make it.
Don't wait.
Thank you for having me, for real. I'm a huge fan. This has been really cool. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and please, love to have you back. Love to have everybody here back. And a week from today, there is Versus. I am going to be on Versus solo. I'm going to be versing myself on Memorial Day. So
like Gollum.
That. And then Alan has a special show on Wednesday.
Yes, I'll be co-hosting with Derek Anderson, DA, and we'll be talking about girl bosses.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. And then Friday, our normal Film Threat live cast. Anyone else? Things coming up? Things to plug?
I'm launching a Locals because I'm jobless and I'm broke. So I'm launching that tomorrow.
Get us a link to the Locals. We will promote it. We'll put the link in the description. Anyone else?
This Saturday, I've got a Scripts on Saturday show where I review screenplays that are circling around Hollywood without spoilers, telling everyone what's actually being written and what's being pushed, hopefully to show people that the studio stuff that's being put out there is not the only thing that's being written in Hollywood.
All right. I think AI is going to be great for indie film, and it's going to cause problems for Hollywood. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. And as Alan always likes to say,
let's get out of here.